Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Build. This is episode 1.48, and today we're going to be discussing the topic, Why Become a Polyglot as a No-Code, Low-Code developer, featuring Markdown, HTML, Mako, Jinja, and more. My name is Brittany Hernandez, and I am a lawyer, a no-code, low-code developer, a legal tech educator, and the global ambassador to law schools for Gavel. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be discussing the topic, why become a polyglot as a no-code, low-code developer? Because a lot of the time we think about no-code, low-code development as something you wouldn't need to learn any languages for. The whole point is that you don't have to retrain. Let's say you're a lawyer who's trying to build something with Gavel. The whole point is that you shouldn't have to retrain as a full stack developer in order to build things on this tool. So same with things like Softer and Airtable and Bubble and all of these different tools. The whole idea is to not have to learn how to code. However, I will make the argument I think it's useful and helpful in understanding how to best utilize the tool, although not necessarily necessary. It can really expand your ideas of what is possible if you understand just even the tiniest little bit of these couple of different languages, just so that you know where to go if you get stuck on something or you want to really expand what you're able to do or get really fancy. So a couple of the ones that are really easy entry points are the ones that I've mentioned here, like Markdown, HTML, Mako, Jinja, and more. So let's start with Markdown, for example. So there's going to be different types of languages, and these are going to be things like, HTML, where HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, they all perform different functions, as part of, let's say, building a website or an app or whatever else. With Markdown, for example, this is really around how to use this to kind of format any type of template that you're creating with like a Gavel, for example. So Markdown has, if you just even Google Markdown, for example, like this, you're going to see this as the first thing, and you can go through the cheat sheets and syntax and see what you're able to do. And what this allows you to do is just add more dimension to your workflows and more visual different pieces, things like bolding, italicized, different sentences or words, things like adding links, pictures, the ability to add videos, for example. So let's go through some of the cheat sheet to see what's possible with some of these. So for example, if we look at this cheat sheet, we can see that we can make fonts bigger, like titles, with things like hashtags for headings, bold with these asterisks, italicized, block quotes, ordered lists, like 1, 2, 3, 4, unordered list, which is like a tick or a bullet point. If you want to indicate that something is code and show it, you'd use backticks. Adding a horizontal line is just a couple of ticks here. How to add a link, for example. So this is one I use quite a lot. So you just use whatever text you want to have show within the straight brackets. And then within parentheses, you add the link itself. There's actually another way you can do this within, for adding an image within Gavel, which is a little bit easier. You just use file within these straight brackets and then the name of the actual image, because you have a library where that's stored and it's just pulling from there. But you can just kind of get the idea that these are really easy to actually kind of go through and test and try. So I'd highly recommend that you even just kind of breeze through and take a look at the cheat sheet here for Markdown, because that will allow you to just have a little bit more dimension into your workflows and make them more visually easy to read. So for example, let's say I go into Code Word Hex. I use a lot of Markdown in this particular workflow because I want to add different visual aspects to this particular one. And one is that I have this indicated as code, even though it's just words. I just wanted it to kind of play off of this code word hex type of thing. So if I put in the wrong password, then I also have the ability to make this, for example, a link, and also to make it italicized. If we go back and we go into this particular workflow, which you put in a code to access, then you'll see that I can actually even use something like Markdown with the asterisk to make this italicized within the actual questions and answers themselves, the different options. So let's say, for example, I take these three and I can see that I can add things like videos, I can change the color of fonts, I can change lots of different things. Here, for example, I have also that kind of underlined different colors. Not all of this is going to be Markdown. Some of this is kind of with other CSS and HTML kind of styling, but just to show you that you can change these and make it more visually dynamic by adding in things like links, bullet points with Markdown as well, underlines and bolding and so on. So that's kind of part of the usefulness of Markdown. And you can also take a look, if you go over to the Gabble website and you go into the Learning Center, so you go to Resources, Learning Center, you'll be able to kind of take a look at some of these things as well. So like customization, like info bubbles and default answers, formatting questions. So if you go into formatting questions, you're going to see this information about Markdown here. So it's saying you can customize the formatting and fonts throughout your workflow using rich text formatting in Markdown. So almost anything is possible formatting wise. If you don't see it below, you can ask us or check out the options here where that leads to the basic syntax of Markdown, which is why we're discussing that one first. So that's a really useful one. And as I showed you, you can see kind of why and how that might become useful. And another one I think is good to go over is HTML. So I did a basics kind of workshop through She Codes. So it goes over the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I felt like this was a really, really useful course. It wasn't very expensive. I think at the time it was less than $100. I'm not sure if it's still less than $100, but the idea is that you have 3 weeks where you do about 5 hours a week and you have different projects and homework assignments at the end of each week with one kind of capstone project where you're building out like the start of a weather app. And it teaches you these different elements along the way. And I think even just going through that basics really taught me so much as a foundation of like how things work when you're building things like applications and websites and things like that, and what function you have for each of the different languages. So, you know, when you think about separating and you understand why you might not want to style something directly in HTML, for example, and instead use a separate CSS file or whatever else, you start to see why. And so it helps you to make better decisions as you are, you know, using these different languages in your workflows if you want to. So in my case, for example, also I know when I can depart from certain rules within the context of this particular tool, because it's kind of, you know, in this case, existing as a particular kind of like subset of a world where it's like, yes, they're part of this larger kind of strategy for your overall business model, but also each workflow is its own little mini world where you can kind of play with its own rules. So that's also just to say, for example, you'll also start to understand why you would use like BR, for example, for break, to add different kind of actual breaks in between lines. And in this case, you also learn how the like kind of backslashes and their placement, like why that would make sense that it's on this side rather than another side, and on all of these different pieces. So it also helped me to understand how I can use things like center as a command to center things like a video or things like an image. So you can kind of use these different pieces and elements, even though you see that there's a combination of lots of different code. I didn't code every part of this. I just grabbed the code from YouTube or Vimeo and said, I want these things to happen. So for example, I use Vimeo Record a lot for my videos, and it gives you an option as you share it to embed it and have it autoplay. So I just click a few buttons in Vimeo that says, I want this video to autoplay, or you can have it loop or whatever else. And I just drop that code into the instruction block, and I put a center, you know, element around it just to say, like, I want you to center this video. So because I understand that that's something that can be done, then I'm able to do that. You can see this is a very big mix of things like HTML as well as Markdown, all in one instruction block. And instruction blocks are really helpful because you don't actually have to have any variables attached to them. They just kind of exist as a way of putting information on the page that you can do a lot of formatting with. So in this one, you can see I have this to make it bold and italicized in Markdown. And then I also have this to make it underlined, and then a paragraph with a style with a color of this particular color. And then I have the words that I want to have underlined, bolded, italicized, and colored all here. And then you can see that each of these are the different bullet points that I'm using, as well as the linking that I'm using here, also Markdown. So that is what I was saying is about this benefit of becoming a polyglot, in this sense of being able to, even as a no-code, low-code developer, understand kind of like what's happening here and how you can play with the different pieces in order to accomplish whatever goal you want to at the end, while at the same time kind of understanding along the process where you can kind of break the rules or adhere to the rules in different ways. So I highly recommend. I'm not affiliated with She Codes or Markdown or Mako or any of these, Jinja, etc. So this is just, I took these courses and I found them really useful. Another one is Mako. So this one I actually didn't know for so long, and I didn't. It was helpful to just kind of have the breakthrough of what it is. And the reason why this is so useful is because it allows you to pull variables and do different functions within the actual workflow itself. So in a lot of the ways that people use Gabble, it's a lot of the time, a lot of the conditional logic and pulling of variables happens within a template. But what I like to do is to practice how you might be able to do a lot of tricky stuff within the workflow itself, even if you didn't have an output document attached to it. So how could you make an actually useful application within Gabble without any template documents? So with that, once I understood the power of the $ into curly brackets technique, that made it to where I was able to really up-level what I could do with my different workflows. In this particular example, I don't use a lot of different Mako in that one, but let's just see if I can find another one where I would have like an output document or something where I'm renaming it. Perhaps this one here. Let's go into this one and see what we have. Let's see. I'll just show you. Let me just see here. In this one. So I'll just show you anyway what this would look like. So let's say that you want to have like the person's kind of like name show that let's say they've input their client's full name here, and you want that to be pulled to name the document. So you can rename the document, as you can see here, using Mako to pull the variable that you previously created and put it over here. So it's just a really easy way to do that. So I think that's a really valuable one, to just know what the language is that's being used, so that if you want to try a bunch of extra, like really crafty, tricky stuff, then you know where the documentation lives and you can try to, play with different things. I always kind of, we don't have a lot of time as we're all busy, but I just encourage you to spend a little bit of time, each week or each month experimenting. So in my case, I always kind of encourage people to have it be on the calendar as part of a habit. So in my case, for example, with today, I have it on my calendar that every Wednesday at this time, I'm doing a video of this sort in order to help myself stay connected with the process of always constantly learning and trying new things. And the way that I internalize that is by trying to explain these concepts to other people. So that is really helpful for me. I do it twice a week. So one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. So on Tuesday, it's a bit more of a practical demonstration, like how to do something. And then, with this one today, it's less of like actually how to do something, but more conceptual and a little bit more business and strategy focused. But in this particular case, it's just helpful to know what this is called, So you know what to Google or what to kind of go in and look at. So this one is really helpful. I ended up just asking the team, like, what is this language that we're using when we use this? And they just told me, and that was easier than like trying to figure out on my own. And the last one I was going to mention here is Jinja specifically. And the reason that I pinpoint this one is because it's what's used in the word add-in. So if you kind of have an idea or a sense of what is being used in these different places, then you're going to be able to start recognizing how to, like, what's being said in each place so that you're able to, you know, try different things with it and try to come up with different ways that you can add to what you're trying to do. As far as the and more part, this is really goes to kind of like that point about this is not the whole world of languages that you can know, the ones that I just pointed out. You know, in this one, in these different ones that I'll kind of eventually take, I'll learn a lot of different things and get to kind of go into different pieces. So as you can see, kind of like what's included in each of these, but I'll be able to learn, like, if you look like at all of these different features and stuff, you can see like this is for beginners. You can take each of these, what's actually included, what you're going to learn. So this is a really important section here. So in this one, in the basics one, which is still under $100, is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and how to use the VS Code editor. And then in the next one, you're learning about APIs, how to use GitHub, how to host. And then in the next one, you get all of those, but then you're also learning Bootstrap and Flexbox and how to optimize SEO, and then React, responsive, etc. And then finally, in this one, you're learning all those things, but also terminal, grids, NPM, you know, fonts, and AI and lots of different pieces. So I will be, you know, kind of going through these pieces little by little, but it's helped me to know what these different languages are and how they might work and operate in the space of, even though I'm using no code, low code tools, how can I combine the knowledge and the tools of having the ability to build things block by block with the knowledge and skills that you gain by knowing what these languages are called and how to use them. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you my contact information in a moment. And just to wrap up with a few announcements, this has been an episode of the Wednesday Build, where I have new episodes live every Wednesday. Also, as I mentioned, I do a new issue of Code Text every Tuesday, as well as I send out a weekly newsletter called the Tuesday Forecast. If you'd like to have a certification in Gavel, you can get certified at the basic, silver, and gold level at chromiumacademy.com. We also have courses in software and Airtable, Go Full Page, and more to come. We also have a community called Chromium Global, and there's also an active Slack community within Gavel if you want to join us there as well. So thank you so much for those of you that are with me live, and for those of you that are on the recording, hello. We're going to meet again next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we're going to talk about the Legal Tech Associate, an ideal blend with hybrid incentives. And this kind of stems from a conversation I had with a colleague about kind of how her firm structures her role as a Legal Tech Associate. So this is a really interesting conversation. I thought I might share some of the insights gained from that conversation with all of you. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or via email at brittany@gavel.io or brittany@chromium.pro. For any inquiries relating to Gavel's law school program, please use the brittany@gavel.io email, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.